From the Fathead Studio in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny.
Man, am I still pretty? And he's like, you ain't pretty, but you're going to be all right.
And now I'm just hanging on, looking at the wall, like flying this way. And I'm like, oh man, I got to let go of this thing at some point.
And then there's one that could literally pick you up.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not really sure about that, but yeah.
That's called a helicopter.
Well,
And the last lap was just chaos. I mean, like 4 wide, 5 wide.
It's like whatever, if you land it and send it into the fence, you're probably not gonna get hurt. Bounce, and then this insane roll, the car that Keegan was in. I mean, I don't know it's the shape of the Beetle or what, but that thing sent it.
So I was the supercharger specialist on my old man's car with
Specialist?
Yeah, it sounds cooler than crew guy.
Hi, I'm Tony Stewart.
I'm Mario Andretti.
I'm Christy Lee.
I'm Alexander Rossi.
I'm Cruz Pedregon.
Hey, I'm Tyler Speer, and this is The Skinny.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. It is a beautiful day here in Speedway, Indiana at the Fatheads Eyewear Studios. I'm Ken Stout. That is Rico Elmore. Great to have him back in the studio with us. Michael Young running the controls here once again. Nice to have him as well. And we have a special guest. He's actually been a longtime friend at this point and from a great family. Already won a number of championships when it comes to drag boat racing, but is disciplined also on dirt and an asphalt oval track racing. He's been doing it for a while despite the young age of 32 years old. Out of Woodstock, Georgia, please welcome Mr. Tyler Speer to the show. Welcome, Tyler.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
So you've had a pretty successful career when it comes to drag boat racing, but you started off much younger than that and not necessarily in that direction, which obviously your father, Tim, is passionate about racing. And doing a little bit of homework on you to get ready for the show, I did not realize that your father also did some drag boat racing, so that's pretty cool. But you didn't have much of a choice when you were coming up in this family.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because on Facebook, it just popped up that 8 years ago was our first full season when we started back in 2015, and we were out in Parker, Arizona. And Dad's done a lot of drag boat racing. Of course, I started out in stock cars and then transitioned into drag boats. Back in 2014 is when I actually got licensed for Pro Mod. And when we showed up, Dad hadn't run in a number of years, so when we showed up in 2015 and we were actually number one qualifier, first real event after I got licensed, and everybody's like, man, who is this guy? Where did he come from? Dad had just been out of it for a while, so when we started back up, it was funny because it's pretty natural. Dad had a lot of experience and a lot of background in it, and thankfully a lot of it seemed to transition over, but I didn't have any experience on the tree or any of that, so it was a lot of it was new to me, but thankfully I seemed like it was a pretty quick learning curve there, so I picked it up pretty quick. And yeah, it's crazy that I think this year is going to be our 9th season in drag boat racing. But like I said, I started out in stock cars in whenever I was, I have to go back, I think when I was 12 I started out in go-karts, then moved into Allison Legacy cars, and then whenever I was 15 I started in late models, and then of course and when I was 18, I moved into ARCA. So it's kind of the transition there.
I remember you coming out, and seeing your name for the first time. And listen, typically the way it goes in drag boats, it's not an easy sport. I mean, nothing at a professional level is. But, I mean, we're talking about boats that exceed 170 miles an hour, so it's no joke. And that particular class is deadly brutal. I mean, they're wicked good on the starting line, and they can run the number. It's an index class. They run the number. They're brutal. So to see somebody come out in their first effort and qualify number one, it's like, who the hell is this kid? Are you kidding me right now? I mean, they're on the number already, right. And then to go out there and show that you absolutely had some talent. I mean, it's crystal clear now, 4 championships later. But yeah, man, you definitely opened some eyes pretty quickly.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of that has to do with background of people, Dad being the main one, and then a lot of people that we knew too. When we started, Chris Vandergriff passed away a couple years ago now. He's the one that got us hooked up with Andy Bowl, which races Top Alcohol Funny Car. And the way all of this started was goes back to boat work in general. Chris and Bob Sr. used to have a boat called the Big Splash. They needed it fixed. So we we fixed all of that, and kind of in trade, he helped us get hooked up with Andy and get our first Hemi motor. And Andy had a lot of good notes and things with the motors program that he had, and that kind of correlated over into us being able to do so well out of the gate. And just comes down to connections and people that Dad had known, and kind of how we put all that together, and it's just parlayed one thing into another, and that's helped us, I think, in my opinion, get a quick start and make it a real short learning curve for us.
It is always about the people, no question. And speaking of people, Tyler Speer is one of the best. We'll learn more about him when we come back.
So that was the first thing that pops into your mind when something like that happens. So I
Don't worry about the broken arms.
yeah. Well, they were already broken. That was the way I looked at it. So they can't break it again.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. Innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Skinny. We have Tyler Speer on the show with us, multi-time champion in drag boat racing. And as you talk to him and watch him here on the show, you'll see he's pretty mild-mannered, soft-spoken, easygoing guy. But don't think for a second he won't rip your head off whenever you get up to the starting line. He's tough as nails. His dad's the same way, always has a smile on his face, just happy to be alive, happy to be at the racetrack. But, man, they are brutally competitive. And while doing a little bit of homework on you, I read that you actually raced one time with not one, but 2 broken arms after you fell off of a ladder. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, we were racing Allison Legacy cars, and we were actually painting the trailer, and I was at home by myself at the race shop and taking the tape off, and the ladder fell out from underneath me and broke both of them. And of course, at the time we were 4th in points, so that was the first thing that pops into your mind when something like that happens. So
Don't worry about the broken arms.
Yeah. Well, they were already broken. That was the way I looked at it. So they can't break it again. So what's the worst that could happen? So it was funny because when I the doctor he was very straight laced, had a bow tie on the whole bit, and so whenever they were casting, for the cast, whenever they were hardening, I made sure I put some angle down in my wrists so I could hold on to the wheel. The only problem that we had was shifting gears. The shifter was in the way of the center of the cast where it comes through your thumb. So a pair of dikes took care of that pretty quickly. So we cut that out. I think out of 34 cars, we still finished, I think, in 10th or 11th.
So after the bones healed, are your wrists now angled down a little bit and ready to drive a Legacy the rest of your life?
Yeah. They pretty much hold that form now, but it was worth it, I thought.
Talk to us about Lucas Oil Speedway and that purpose-built drag boat track.
Man, it is actually the best track, in my opinion. Multiple things, of course, you get to watch dirt track car racing at night, so that's always a good time too. But that's actually the place where I got licensed for not only Pro Mod but also Top Fuel. We set records there, of course, rebroke them naturally from the Phoenix Air being a little bit better. We broke the record out there, but the track is it's awesome, and it's a great place too, just for everybody, the fans, everybody. I mean, they stock the pond there. Not that I would eat them with the amount of maybe other substances that go in the water, but it's a good time. We've had a lot of success there, won championships there, make or break championship type races there, and it's a good place, so we always have a good time, and it's awesome, and it's a pretty cool thing that Lucas did for the sport, really.
I remember when they were building that. Of course, I was at the time flying a lot with Forrest, and we'd be at drag races, and he's like, "We're gonna stop by the ranch on the way home," and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, whatever." What was I to say? I was in his plane. It wasn't like I was gonna tell him take me somewhere else, but anyhow, flying in there and seeing a scraper down in that bottom of that drag boat area, it looked like a Matchbox car. So the folks at home, you would have to look at it, but I mean, it is a huge, purposely built. And Forrest was telling me about how the water runs over the edges and it keeps the ripple out of, the wave, or keeps it down. And so I was amazed. And, can't mention Wheatland without the diamond bar. Hey, here's looking at you. So.
Well, the track is special, as both of you are indicating. And yes, some of the technology that was built into it is second to none. As Tyler was saying, you're talking about it rolling over on the rocks and going back down. And rollers, they call them rollers in drag boat racing, are sure death to a drag boat. And what'll happen is they make a run down through there. If you're on a river or a lake, I mean, you have to wait for all the rollers to settle down before you can send the next pair. And the way that one was designed gets rid of those almost immediately. So
right, and Forrest said, it would go out in a regular setting like what you're talking about. It would go out and hit it and then come right back in. Instead, this goes out and kind of takes them
goes away,
completely out of it.
And then, of course, they also came up with 2 designated areas for the safety boats to get, so they could be close but not on the actual track. So another great advancement there in safety. Tyler, whenever you talk about that place, I mean, those are the things I look at, and then the shutdown area as well, because you guys are absolutely flying in the fuel boats at, in excess of 260 miles an hour.
Yeah. The coolest part about that is, for the fans, coming to that track and watching drag boats. A lot of times drag boats aren't that fast of a program. And just like you said, with the rescue coves that they have, for the rescue boats, not only sit, but there's actual ramps there. So if a boat breaks 200 feet down the track, they can tow them off track quickly. So it keeps the pace moving quickly for the fans that are there watching in the stands. The other thing that they have that's pretty neat is, you can actually sit there on the waterfront with your camper. It's dry camping, but you can sit there and actually watch the boats run from your camper. So whenever Forrest and Lucas did this, they did it top notch. I mean, they almost thought of everything. So it makes the program quick. Just makes it a lot of fun for fans and everybody. I mean, even whenever we go into the ramp to go in to get to the holding rope, we have to drive by the stands, so all the fans get to look at the boats. And so a lot of times we try to do giveaways and throw out things for the fans and that kind of stuff. So it's just a really neat place, and there's no other place like it that has that kind of fan interaction.
Great stuff for sure. You said a lot of great words about that racetrack, but don't think for a second you're not going to get a phone call from Forrest for talking about his fish not being edible.
I wasn't going to say anything.
You can eat them. They look fun.
We're going to take a quick break here. We heard him mention that he got his license there at Lake Lucas, if you will. That's a little more involved than you might imagine. We'll touch on it when we come back.
You're not swimming. You're just sinking. So the first time is kind of strange, but the second time they actually try to roll you, and it's
Welcome back to the Fatheads Eyewear Studios. I'm Ken Stout, Rico, Elmore, and Michael Young in the studio with us in Woodstock, Georgia. Joining us is Tyler Speer, a multi-time champion in drag boat racing, also accomplished in ARCA racing as well. We do want to touch on you and your success in ARCA. But first, you mentioned something in the last segment where you were talking about getting licensed. And I don't think people understand what you have to go through to become licensed to run in what they call a capsule boat and drag boat racing. So when you get up to classes that are as fast as Pro Mod, they run capsules. They run inside of a capsule for safety purposes, obviously. Well, if you go for a ride in one of those boats and it slings the capsule out and rattles you around in there, they want to know that you're able to keep your composure and do what you're supposed to do to keep yourself safe while you are quite possibly sitting at the bottom of a lake. So it's not an easy thing to do. So walk us through what it takes to be licensed, Tyler.
So the first thing you have to go through is what they call a dunk test. And a dunk test is basically just they have a dummy capsule without a windshield in it. And they're looking for a couple of things. You touched on one of them, Ken, was they're looking for to make sure you keep your composure. The second thing is to make sure your your breathing system works and that you're comfortable with it. One thing that we do, I try to go swimming every year with my safety gear. Some people do, some people don't. I just want to make sure that I'm good to go, let alone how the crash goes down, because in drag boat racing, crashes can happen a multitude of ways. So you have to go through the CAPS dunk test certification. So what they do is they walk you in with just your helmet, and basically you have an air bottle. So it's your air bottle, your helmet, and there's a breathing apparatus. A lot of people don't kind of know what the helmets look like. They actually have a breathing apparatus on it, almost like a scuba gear, except it's basically stuck to within the helmet, so you can't come off of it. It's not like you're holding it in your mouth. And they walk you into the water, make sure that you can breathe underwater. And then what they do is they seat belt you into the dunk test capsule, and they will lower you into the water. First time is nice and slow. And once you do it the first time, you kind of get used to it. It's very odd feeling as the water's coming up, and you're just basically scuba diving, but you're not swimming, you're just sinking. So the first time is kind of strange, but the second time they actually try to roll you, and it's actually kind of fun the second time once you're doing it. But once you pass that first go around,
I was going to say, what do they do?
First go around and get your dunk certification, then they'll allow you to make your safety passes. Last year we actually started like a rental program for drag boats, and we had 2 different drivers last year drive, and it was pretty neat, because a lot of people don't know how to get into the sport of drag boat racing, because it is definitely different than anything car related. So those guys did pretty cool in walking them through the process, and of course I went swimming with them in a pool to make sure that their helmet gear and that their air system would work. And that's just some of the precautions that we take. But once you do that, then you have to get on the hold rope and basically just show everybody that you can make it A to B without running off course, running into anything, doing what you're supposed to do from there, and make the boat run 175 or however, almost 200 mile an hour, basically on water.
Yeah, I was wondering. What I was saying, and apologize interrupting. I said, but what would prepare you for getting launched? You know what I mean? It's one thing to get dunked, and it's one thing for them to roll you over. But at speed doing that, I mean, have you had that experience yet?
I have gotten close one time specifically out in Parker, Arizona. We had an issue with the strut. Basically, a strut failed in qualifying, and then that turned into us doing a repair, and we sat on the hold rope for first round eliminations. And the left rear sponson filled up with water after sitting for 45 minutes. So this was going into the world finals, was the next race, and we were leading the points, and we were racing Jarrett Sylvie, and we got to about half track, and the boat was not happy. It was bucking, and I tried to lift and coast, and the water being full in the left rear sponson made it buck left and right, and we bent the frame rail. The motor shoved forward like 5 inches, and that was the closest I got. I mean, that boat was pretty sideways, and it's thankfully I hit the chutes and got it to settle in time. But yeah, I don't really want to get out of. We try to do enough maintenance stuff that we don't have any ejecto capsule situations.
When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about drag boat racing. You'd be astonished at how much of the boat is not touching the water.
The boats are something else, and they're more airplanes than they are boats, really.
Welcome back to the Skinny. It's an absolutely gorgeous day here as we enter spring in the Indianapolis area. Unfortunately, Tyler Speer could not join us here in the studio, so he's coming to us remotely from his hometown in Woodstock, Georgia, just outside of the Atlanta area. Very successful in the world of drag boat racing, and we've been talking about that sport. If you're not familiar with it, you should certainly turn it on and watch some of it. It is extremely exciting, to say the least, with speeds that are mind-boggling. In excess of 270 miles an hour. Kevin Kinsley just did a pass with SDBA, went 272. Scotty Lumbert still holds the record, even faster than that, and he did go for one of those big rides, unfortunately. David Kirkland, the Spirit of Texas. You know as well, Tyler, with your boat, your fuel boat, you have been 255 miles an hour inside of that monster. Still the current ET world record holder at 3.104 set at Phoenix. So incredible stuff. And I remember it was a picture of Dale DeChamorro, who was driving for Eddie Knox back in the day, and that was when they were still using single props and top fuel. They're all dual prop boats now. It took them a bit to get that figured out. Once they did, oh my God, the sky was a limit on how fast they could go. But I remember seeing a picture of Dale and his hydro, and the only thing that was touching the water was maybe, what would you say, Tyler, 6 inches to a foot at the most at the end of both sponsons. And then the entire rest of the boat is in the air, and it's a 2-ear prop, and 1 ear is in the water, 1 ear is out of the water. So you could see daylight underneath the entire hydro boat, with the exception of that 1-ear prop. And then, of course, it's kicking a rooster tail up that's throwing thousands of pounds of water in the air for the better part of a quarter mile. I mean, they're absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, the boats are something else, and they're more airplanes than they are boats, really. Back in the day when they had single props, those single props were under insane amount of force and a load. Going to the twin prop, that's definitely changed the game on all of that. And like the picture when we set the record out in Phoenix and ran 3.10, there was nothing, the front sponsons, and even going from, the big Curtis's to the outriggers, they've made them a lot more stable. But of course, as soon as they become more stable, we throw more power at it and run them even faster until we can get them unstable. But whenever we set the record, you can just see the front sponsons on our boat. They were almost just walking. I mean, you could, every other picture, the left one was touching and the right one was touching, the left one was touching the right one. And the back, you can see the top ears of the prop, just like you said, Ken. I mean, there's nothing in the water. You just want the bottom blades pushing the boat, and that's basically it, And the Scotty's run, I think whenever he set those, either Phoenix or Parker, when he set and made that mile an hour record, and man, he was David Kirkland and those guys definitely had that deal figured out, and he is the great to me, because I grew up watching him. So did an awesome job, and always enjoyed watching that boat run, and it was just always on a rail. So we've never had the horsepower numbers to be able to get the mile an hour, but we keep doing a lot of stuff to the boats with Bob Montgomery, and try to make the boats quicker and quicker. But we're hopefully working on the motor program. So we'll see if we can catch up to that maybe here in the future.
Speaking of motor program, I remember Dennis Gibson would always come to Brownsburg and buy all of the old parts from Schumacher and whoever else he could buy the parts from. I mean, is that a standard deal with you guys?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to. A lot of our parts are old. I mean, we focus more on the boat than we have the motor side of things. Like, I think our motor program is, God, I want to say we're running, like, our heads are, they're stage 4. It is not new technology, but we have the one thing that we do have, our advantage is we have the molds for the Ellison, even the molds for the Kazi capsule. So we build everything in house. So it was easier and more cost effective for us to focus on the boat than it was the motor. We had a good baseline, and we're not that far off, but if we can make the boats handle better and lighter and quicker, then that's kind of what we focused on. But a lot of the guys, Tom Sorsey, I know a lot of those guys were talking to and using parts from John Force. It just depends who they had a relationship with.
Want to get the skinny on other guests and different types of motorsports? Check out our YouTube page and get the skinny. The Skinny is brought to you by American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04.
Welcome back to the Skinny. We have Tyler Speer on with us this week, an accomplished racer. Of course, we've been documenting that behind the wheel of a drag boat, but he's also extremely talented behind the wheel of a stock car, including up to the ARCA level. Of course, it gets pretty pricey when you start playing that game. Not that drag boats are cheap, but certainly the ARCA series has become quite expensive if you want to campaign and head that direction. And Tyler, you did have some success there. I know particularly you guys seem to really love the dirt tracks, including Springfield and DuQuoin, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we partnered up with, since we started in 2010 and in the ARCA series, we partnered up with Andy Hillenberg and try to hit some of the races where he either has openings, and of course that's not price wise, it's not that out of this world. And the dirt tracks are typically cheaper, a little easier on tires. They chew them up just the same, but it's not a short track asphalt deal where you're going through 8 sets in a weekend. In the last 5 races, we seem to have hit a wall. We've led laps. We've been, up in the top 5 a lot, really, but we seem to hit a wall with 7th. We keep getting to 7th place finish. So every time I think we had 4 in a row or 5 in a row or something. So trying to break that, but it's we try to normally hit those races, and it works out because we're in Wheatland, Missouri, and normally the DuQuoin race is Labor Day weekend. So we always try to. There's been 3 occasions now where we've raced the drag boat on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the ARCA race is normally on Monday. So then we get over there and run ARCA on Monday. So makes for an eventful weekend, but we are definitely tired by the time we get done with it.
You gotta feel like you're like in a regular street car. By the time you get out of the drag boat, you go over and start driving on the dirt.
Yeah, it's the boats don't turn at all. So then you get in the car and you're like, oh, this is what response looks like. Okay.
That is a great point. We didn't touch on that. So is that a dream? I mean, would you pursue that given the correct sponsor? Would you love to go that route and chase that dream at all?
Yeah, it really started out in stock cars, and from stock cars, kind of turned drag boats. It's interesting because the press that we seem to get out of the drag boats just seems to be way higher than anything that we were getting, whenever I started out in ARCA, and I've been racing ARCA since 2010. I didn't start drag boat racing until 2014. And in 2015, when we went back to race ARCA, it was funny because I was immediately the boat guy. I'm like, man, I've been doing ARCA way longer.
I've been the stock car guy for 10 years, and now I'm the boat guy.
Yeah, so it's funny because, at the boat races, I'm kind of the ARCA guy, and then you go to the ARCA races, I'm the boat guy. So it just depends on where you're at. But they're just completely different to drive. And the drag boat races is a one-shot deal, right? So you can't make something up. So if you hit you miss a mark one time, that's the end. You're on the trailer. The ARCA racing, stock cars in general, it's a longer pace, right? So your mentality changes on exactly, trying to hit your marks and what you're doing. It's just interesting. You can make some of those up, and you can try to make changes, as a driver. In the drag boat world, you can't really make a whole lot of changes because normally it comes to bite you. If you try to adjust here or there, you just want to do the same thing every time. And in ARCA and any stock car stuff, you move your line around, right, and do some other things. So some of the driving habits and everything else are just a little bit different, but both of them are just as equally fun vehicles to drive and race in.
I was thinking because so would you ever try regular Pro Mod on the drag strip?
Yeah, we it's interesting because we've talked to Andy Bull, and I have talked multiple times, even talked because we get some of our parts for Top Fuel stuff too, just like we were mentioning from Tim Wilkerson. So we've talked to some of those guys about it, and when Chris Vandergriff was around, he actually helped us, and we went down to the Frank Hawley school and did the school there, which was beneficial not only to learn about the car side and the asphalt side, but there's a lot of things, of course, that Frank Hawley had that kind of took with me and used back on the boat side. So it's a pretty neat experience, that Chris did for us. So it's, I mean, I wouldn't rule it out on ever driving anything really. It's kind of funny because Mom and a couple other people are like, I'd drive a toilet if there was a wheel and a motor attached to it, which is probably not wrong, honestly. So
I respect that.
Yeah, well, I think we all respect that. Yeah, that's it's certainly a progression, and we've seen a lot of drag boat competitors do that, make their way over to the asphalt. That list is pretty long, and I'm sure you would have plenty of success if you decided to go that route. I love the capabilities though of running both. You and the oval track, and then obviously the drag boats. You and your father both are cut, grind, weld guys. I mean, you're hands-on guys. You talked about Andy Hillenberg having that program. Did you have anything to do with that program, or it was strictly arrive and drive?
No. So the way that it worked out when we first started, and kind of some background on it, Andy's son wanted to get into Allison Legacy cars, so we traded 2 Allison Legacy cars for an ARCA car. That's actually how we got our start. And then that turned into, of course, when Andy had an opening, sometimes it would be our car, and sometimes it would be his motor, or sometimes it'd be our car and our motor and just his number. And almost every time I always did my own setup. I had help from some of the guys, Gene Roberts, that used to be crew chief for Bill Elliott. He's out of Monroe, and he did all our shock work. And so there's multiple people that helped us on some of the setup stuff, but I all the build, everything else, we did all of that stuff. We went up to Andy's shop and helped put the cars together and that kind of stuff too. So anything we do, we're always hands-on, and I always want to know what I'm driving, and I enjoy working on the cars and the boats, and doing the fabrication work is really my enjoyment, not only driving, but also building them. So every year it feels like we either build a car or a boat. Last year, I think there was 4 Pro Mods that came out of our shop. And so that was a pretty neat deal at the beginning of last year. And we've got some new stuff too that we're working on for this year on the boat side. So we've got, we've got a brand new boat that we're going to unveil at the first race. And then we're changing our program over for this next year too. So, I definitely love being hands-on, and I just enjoy doing the fab work. And of course, I don't have any, I never had any schooling on it. It was just hard knocks, build something and, hey, that broke, that's not strong enough, so let's fix that. But it's just, to me, it's a lot of fun just to build it and build cool stuff, I guess, basically.
He's deeply ingrained in the sport, no question about that. 4 Pro Mods out of the shop last year. I might also add 1 Tri-Tune to that as well. They did a little bit of work on my beer barge along the way, so it was good stuff. But we're going to pick his brain a little bit more when we come back. This guy is loaded with information. Stay with us. Oh, and he's also going to talk about that boat that he's going to debut.
I really don't know why we have one. I feel like it's just something for us to hold on to and make us feel good, because it's a point and shoot.
Welcome back to the Skinny. We have Tyler Speer on the show with us, multi-time champion in drag boat racing. Hey, man, one of the things that's unique about drag boat racing is the name of the boats. And everybody has a name for their boats. Some of them, obviously, at this point, historical, because they were so successful with the drivers that had them. But I believe it was your first boat, was named Climax. How did you come up with that name?
So whenever I got started actually in cars, Gary Brigham was the owner back in the day of Climax, back in the 60s and 70s, back when it was top fuel, and that boat set a lot of records. So he ended up passing away actually before I got started in drag boats. He passed away in 2007, I believe. And I wanted to do something to honor his, kind of honor his name. So for 2015 and 2016 season, I wanted to try to get a championship with the Climax boat again, kind of in his honor. So thankfully we ended up doing that. And then from there we moved over to the Georgia Outlaw name, which we've carried ever since. But that was the reason I wanted just to kind of honor Gary for helping me get into stock cars, because he helped us get in and got our first actual stock car. He bought our first car for us. So it's kind of a tribute to him.
I was able to dig up the obituary for Gary. He and your father were extremely close, from what I understand. I believe he was at his funeral as well. But reading that guy went 187 miles an hour. We're talking about late 60s, early 70s in those boats. Those are all open boats at the time.
Insane.
And unbelievable, right?
Yeah, those guys, a lot of guys think we're insane, and those guys were another level in my eyes, because those were old shovel-nosed hydros too back in those days. And those boats, you thought what we have now is unstable. Those were not meant to drive 180 miles an hour by any means.
Yeah, and you mentioned before, it's something that I didn't bring up, but you can't steer the boats. A lot of people probably think, they're used to seeing a regular boat. You can steer a boat. Well, there's a single blade that goes down in the water at the back of the boat to kind of guide it, I guess, once you slow back down. But once you take off, I mean, that thing does, all it really does is make the boat angry if you put too much rudder in it, right?
Yeah, so in the pro mod and all the way, kind of up in, any of the single prop boats, you have up until maybe the start line to help guide it. The top fuel boat, I really don't know why we have one. I feel like it's just something for us to hold on to and make us feel good, because it's a point and shoot.
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say.
You better start going for shoots or other things, because they do not steer. The only time they steer is when it comes all the way back down off the plane at like 10 miles an hour, and then you turn it and it's like, hey, now we're drifting to the right. Cool, that's the way I wanted to go. Other than that, you're just helping guide it. And it's interesting on the steering part of it, which is different from the kart guys, is that everybody says, like on the cars, if you have a hole go out, it'll push the car left or right. But because of the water and the twin props and the way that it works, at least maybe the other boats have the problem, but our boat doesn't ever move. We've lost part of a shaft and other things, and the boat will take a jog over to the right or whatever, and it'll set back down and still go pretty straight. So thankfully, the setups that we have are pretty good, that we don't need the rudder too much. But of course, there have been times that you're sawing on it pretty hard, and like you said, Ken, all it does is it makes them buck and get really upset the more you try to steer them.
Great stuff. Hey, man, he's going to debut a brand new boat, something I've never heard of that's been raced on the water. My guess is it's happened, but I've just not heard of anybody doing it. Nonetheless, it will certainly be fresh from many, many years ago if anybody's done it. He'll talk about it when we come back. Not the back of the boat.
No. The crazy part
on your back.
This is the crazy part. They go, the way the rules are written for that is it's optional to hook it up.
Want to get the skinny on other guests and different types of motorsports? Check out our YouTube page and get the skinny. The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to The Skinny. I'm Ken Stout. We've had Tyler Speer on the show the entire time here from Woodstock, Georgia. And he's going to make a debut here with a brand new boat in 2023. Tyler, we want to hear more about it because you told me what it was, and I was blown away. It's super cool, man. So let everybody know what you're coming out with.
So we actually have two new things we're coming out with. The brand new boat that we're going to unveil. It's called Frankenstein. It's a open hydro. We're going to try to run QE with it. It's an outrigger style, which I haven't seen any of outriggers that are open try to be run before. So we'll see how that one runs. And the even bigger news is we're stepping up to top alcohol for the 2023 season. And but we're not doing it in the same way with the screw supercharger on alcohol. We're going to try to actually put an A-fuel motor in it, which it's allowed in the rule books. So we've already cleared it. But nobody's run A-fuel in a very long time in drag boats. So we're going to try to we're going to see how it goes. We actually have some help from NHRA team. I won't say their name yet, but we've got hopefully a good baseline. So we'll see if we can keep everything in it and see how the A-fuel program goes, because I know on these boats in general like a lot of torque, low end torque, and the more we talked about it, the more it seemed like it was a good idea was to put nitro in it. So we'll see how that goes for the 2023 season. But I think we've got a pretty good start and pretty much got all the parts and pieces in. So first race ought to be really interesting when we unveil the boat and there's TAH on the side of the hat and there's no supercharger on top of it.
And where is that going to be?
So the first race is May 14th, actually in Wheatland, Missouri at the Lucas Oil Speedway.
So, yeah, let's touch on this just a little bit more for the fans that might not understand the differences. So, a typical top alcohol hydro or top alcohol funny car in NHRA will run on alcohol and have a supercharger on top. But there is a provision in the rule book that says you can run nitro, but you're not allowed to run a supercharger when you run nitro. So that's the program that you're going to introduce.
Yep. So we are, so we're going to try to run, it's basically it's a Hemi. Both of them are Hemi based. But instead of having a screw blower supercharger with on alcohol, we're allowed to run nitro, which is a much more violent substance. But instead of having a supercharger, it's just naturally aspirated. The class is really similar for fans and the viewers watching. It's a lot similar to top alcohol dragster, where they can run A fuel and they can run the screw blown Hemis. So it's kind of like the same class in drag boats for top alcohol hydro. So instead of doing the traditional route and spinning the motor almost 10, 11,000 RPM, we're gonna try to do it by spinning it 7,000 RPM and just throwing a lot of nitro in it.
Yeah, in short, they're grunt motors, and you're exactly right. I mean, the water provides a bunch of load, and if they struggle with them on the asphalt, it's because they run out of load. But you guys are thinking in the water, you'll be able to keep it loaded up.
Yeah, we have a couple different things that are on our side. Just looking at the dynamics of boats in general, if you talk to a lot of the A fuel car guys, Randy Myers, for example, there's just a lot of different people. It's the first one that comes to mind because I know Megan Myers through NGK, but they have to pull a lot of timing out and do a lot of slipping of the clutch. For us in the boat world, we don't have to do any of that. As soon as our clutches are like in and out crash boxes. So we use the props as slip to get the boats to hook up. So we throw everything of power at it from the hit and we try to keep it loaded up A to B. So we don't actually pull timing to get the clutch sticks, the lock up or anything like that. So just the dynamics of it are a little bit different, but the low bottom end torque is what boats always seem to want. So it just seemed like it was a good transition, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And yeah, so NGK, you mentioned them. Talk about some of the people that help you get it done here while we finish up.
Yeah. So, kind of another thing when we're coming out with this year is Timbercraft Whiskey. They're actually out of Big Springs, Texas. We're unveiling a new suit and some other things this year with them, and the boat's going to have a completely different look. Whiskey. Instead of the red and black and white, it's going to be blue and golds and white. So we're doing some changes there, and of course Pro Boat, which is our shop, VP Racing Fuels. We have excess power batteries, Hedman Hustler headers. They've been with us since day one. And NGK, naturally, they've helped us do a lot. And, of course, a lot of contacts through them.
Great people over there. Really good people.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Leland and Jackie and all them they're awesome to deal with and always a lot of fun, too.
So as we wrap things up here, one last question. People might not realize this. As we go back to that QE boat, that open hydro boat you're talking about, some of the apparatus that you have to wear, I mean, it's a red flag, man. When you have to put on ballistic pants, people might not know what that is. You can Google that. Google's your friend. But, yeah, they have to wear ballistic pants, and then you put on a parachute. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. So you have to have a parachute on your back that's attached to your life
jacket. Not the back of the boat. Not the back of the boat.
No. The crazy part
on your back.
This is the crazy part. They go, the way the rules are written for that is it's optional to hook it up because some people have been pulled out of their boats due to the parachutes coming deployed when the boat's not wrecking. So it's optional to the driver whether you want to hook it up, if that makes you feel even better about putting a parachute on your back. Like Paris.
All right. Yeah. That's
Ladies and gentlemen, it is not a game for everybody, but the water's warm if you want to jump on in. Tyler Speer, hey man, time flies by, but thank you so much for joining us. We had a great time.
Hey, I appreciate being on the show, guys.
Best of luck in 2023. And now you know the skinny on some of the drag boat action and Tyler Speer. We'll see you next week.